Welcome to At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. It won't come as any surprise to any of you that the most recent census revealed that only 16% of our nation's population resides in rural communities. 10 years ago, it was 20%. 100 years ago, it was 72%. We're going to talk about the viability of small communities in this economic downturn for the next half hour with a village president and with the Illinois Director of USDA Rural Development, Colleen Callahan. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, H. Thanks for the invitation.
And we'll talk about what rural development means to small communities in just a moment. But first, let's welcome Marv Waters to At Issue. Marv is the village president in Alpha,
yes,
to the northwest of Peoria, which means you are located...
the village of Alpha is located just south of the Quad Cities by 20 miles, and we're north of Galesburg by about 20 miles too. So we sit on the, just off the Route 74 as you're going into the Quad City area. H.
One thing before we get started. Becky Humphrey, the village president of Liverpool, and Greg Bartley, the village president of Lafayette, both unfortunately had to step aside just moments ago before our taping, both with job-related conflicts. So they will not be joining us, but Marv will fill in quite appropriately.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Alpha. You lost population again in the last decade.
Yes, over our last decade, our population was listed at 730. 10 years ago, we've dropped down to just 671. So we had a population shift of a loss of about 10%. It's hard to see them go, but I knew it would be lower, but I didn't realize it was going to be that low when the population numbers actually came through.
Have you looked at where the losses were and why they may have occurred?
Well, mainly we're seeing our younger folks leave the area, of course, and we're also seeing the population age in Alpha. And with that age, we also see a passing of some of the residents. Some of the other residents, as they get older, move away with their children to other towns, outside the state even.
How about job prospects in Alpha?
Right now, our local employers are few. We do have Pioneer. We do have a FS Distribution Center. We do have a couple other small employers. I work at the local bank, and that's a larger employer for the village. Those are the main ones in the immediate area. We do have a number of people that drive to the Quad Cities and to the Galesburg area for other jobs, so too.
But that has had an impact on Alpha as well, because of especially in Galesburg over the last 15 years, you've lost large manufacturing jobs there.
Galesburg's lost a number of manufacturing jobs. With the trade agreements that have been arranged, they've shipped them to Mexico at first, then to China. OMC's lost, Butler is gone. Just recently, ADM has even closed their local processing plant, and that has impacted us because we have local residents that work at those plants, or did work at those plants.
Let's look at what I would call the two keys to the viability of a small town. Maintain a school, maintain a post office. We saw recently that the Postal Service has suggested that as many as 3,700 different post offices closed. That does not include Alpha?
Alpha is not on that list, thankfully. We do have a number of smaller unincorporated towns and incorporated towns that are on the list, though. And I feel sorry for this because you're right, the post office is an integral part. It's almost like a meeting area, you might say. That's where the notices are posted. That's where you see your friends when you pick up your mail. That's where things are happening, you might say.
And you still have school?
Yes, we still have an elementary school. We're a combined district with the town of Woodhull and Alwood School District. And we also right now are co-opting some of our sports programs with other districts, though, too. Cambridge in football in particular right now.
Colleen, in very broad overview, first, before I ask the question, what is USDA Rural Development?
USDA Rural Development is a lender. We're much like the SBA, the Small Business Administration. We have loans and grants, except we exist exclusively for the benefit of rural communities. So our responsibility and the opportunities that we present are to finance the future of rural America.
In very broad terms, what do you hope will happen for these small communities, and what role might USDA Rural Development play in that?
Well, we hope at USDA Rural Development that we will become partners. And we need partners today as much or more than we ever have. The budget situation is uncertain. As you look at the federal government, last year we had 7 continuing resolutions before we got a budget that we knew would be in place, that we could count on that funding to utilize to the benefit of our rural communities through our loans and grants. While we don't know what the next budget is going to be, clearly it will not be as much as it has been in the past. All you have to do is read and observe and listen, and you would know that. So we need relationships in Alpha and in the rural communities throughout Illinois so that the funding that we do have available can help leverage the money that they have. The limiting factor always, personally and professionally for most of us, is that there's just never enough money. And what USDA Rural Development can bring to the table is that little bit of extra money or the seed money that it will take to build from. So my personal analysis of what USDA Rural Development does financially is to make possibilities possible. Without that funding that can be achieved through working with rural development, none of these needed projects, whether it's in housing or whether it's in community needs, if it's a fire station or a storm siren, or whether it is the business in Alpha that wants to start business there or an existing business that wants to expand, we have the financial capacity to make that possibility possible.
You mentioned some general categories there. Are there some specific examples in our viewing area that where USDA Rural Development has made a project work that wouldn't have worked otherwise?
Almost all of them that have used USDA Rural Development funding would have been in jeopardy were it not for that partnership and that relationship, and I see the mayor acknowledging that as I speak. Let's talk about one quickly that is called Community Connect, which is a telecommunications, broadband connectivity project that assists our rural communities not only in the schools but also for medicine, for health purposes. And so with the Community Connect, we're able to partner with the community and we're able to either bring to or improve upon that broadband or speed internet. And notice I didn't say high-speed internet because there are still some that are on dial-up, believe it or not. And so if we can assist in that manner, then medical records can be shared. If there was a clinic in Alpha, they could more immediately share test results with the hospital in Galesburg. The junior colleges, community colleges, high schools could have a broader educational relationship if they have that higher speed connectivity. I think that's a perfect example right now of a need and a way that we can be helpful.
Illinois is one of 16 states benefiting from that, right?
Yes.
And Colleen mentioned medicine. Your wife happens to be a nurse.
Yes.
I would assume she'd be in favor of something like this.
Oh, yes. In fact, they're going to electronic medical records at that office. They are actually owned by the Genesis Health System of the Quad Cities. And as that happens, that's part of it. The broadband is very needed in our area because, just as you said, to connect and deliver that patient's history or information, give information back and forth. I could even see it being used on our local ambulance service, those type of things too. I think the information highway is going to be our next interstate system. And so I think the broadband is that information highway.
It's a utility.
It is.
Well, let me explore a possibility. If we hear a lot of people talk about wanting to have a rural lifestyle. Gee, I wish my pace was slower. Gee, I wish I could enjoy a nice quiet view with birds chirping and be able to say hi to Alice as I walk down the street. But they all move to urban areas. Might, over time, high-speed broadband internet allow people to work from Alpha and not have to live in an urban area? Do you envision that?
Yes, I envision that because I think that's one of the things that we might have going for us is that we can offer that lifestyle, that quality of life, the know your neighbor, be a friend in the community, be a part of the community, and also have your work right there at the house or in a small shop somewhere and have it all internet based. There's no doubt about it.
I work out of my house.
Yeah, there is great emphasis now. as you can imagine, in the federal government to telework or telecommute, if you will. And when you look at what happened on the day of the earthquake, if you look at the snowmageddon that they experienced a winter or two ago, had those telework or telecommute agreements been in place where you were able to work from home because you had taken your laptop home with you the day before and it was set up for you to do so, you can have the benefit of being in your own community where you reside, become a contributor in that community, and still do the work that may be based out of a much larger metropolitan location.
Marv, earlier we mentioned that some of your residents work in other communities, Quad Cities, Galesburg, what have you, and you don't necessarily, I mean, when you talk about economic development, you still win even if a company doesn't come to Alpha, if it came to Woodhull or even Galesburg.
Very much so. There's not that, I don't see that hesitancy about traveling a few miles. A lot of people look at the town itself as far as what amenities we offer, how the village board acts to residents, and do we go out of our way to greet people, welcome them? Do we have things going on within the town? And so that's all part of it.
H, let me just add, if you would, a regional perspective. We're being asked at USDA Rural Development, as we make loans and grants these days, to maybe ask more questions than we have in the past, or to ask different questions than we have in the past. And let's say Alpha has a very specific need. It would be short-sighted of us as the lender, and that's what we are, and you're a banker professionally. When someone comes in for a loan, you're asking, and where do you see this loan helping you or taking you in 5 years? Because you want to have some assurance that that loan is going to be paid back. We're a lender. We're not giving this money away. We expect it to be paid back, albeit at a lower interest rate and a longer life of the loan typically than you would find at the commercial bank, or we're partners if we guarantee the loan. So it would be prudent for us to say, if you came to us and said we need funding for a project, for us to ask how this will benefit maybe not only Alpha, but maybe Woodhull in the process. And so maybe we need to look at more regionalism when we make these loans and grants than we have in the past, specific community by community by community.
Well, you are involved with the Henry County Economic Development
Partnership, yes.
Okay.
We have a partnership that's between the county. Years ago, the county felt a need for economic development movement within the county, other than cities by themselves. So the county seeded some money, and we were able to develop a development partnership between individuals, communities, and the county, and private enterprise too, to go forward in this. And it's been in business, I believe, close to 10 to 15 years. We're fortunate in Henry County to also have a rural revolving loan fund, which was started out by the EDA, and so we received that grant, and I'm on that board, so it's nice to see those funds being expended within the community to create jobs, to retain jobs.
But you might be able to work in conjunction if there was an appropriate project with USDA Rural Development in a multi-community effort.
The part of the, on my side, as far as a lender now, speaking not as a mayor but as a lender, I can see that happening lots of times, because what we have to do is we have to go in and grab several different strings from different sources. One might be the USDA or the SBA. Another one might be the rural revolving loan funds. Others might be personal assets. Others, there's all sorts of interested parties to make a good concept come to life and actually make it work.
And that rural revolving loan fund that Marv is talking about, I call that the gift that keeps on giving. That is not a loan. That is a grant, and typically they are allocated from USDA Rural Development. The way we have chosen to do it in Illinois is in $99,000 increments. So basically, the community, the county, the entity gets the $100,000, let's say. They then choose how to utilize it. So if there is a business that needs a new facade, if there is a business that needs a new water system in order to stay viable, they go to that revolving loan fund and say, I need $20,000, and they'll say, okay, how about 3.5% interest over 5 years? Now that makes that real doable for that business, and they're going to work their tail off to get that money back either on time or ahead of time. and the money keeps coming back. And so then more people have an opportunity to utilize it. So that is a real partnership that works with many examples.
I've seen it work numerous times in my time with the board, and it's nice to have that out there. My only regret is that we're not busy enough because of the local and national downturn in the economy. I wish there was more use for that. I'd love to be going to those meetings on a monthly basis to approve new loans.
There's a challenge to anybody out there with a project.
That's right. That's right.
Do you have a specific, Henry County, a specific example of?
We do. We were talking earlier before we went on the air that one of the initiatives of USDA Rural Development is renewable energy. It's called the REAP program, Renewable Energy for America. Another is Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, which is the local foods initiative. But as it specifically relates to Henry County, the Renewable Energy Program now can fund blender pumps, which means that when you go into your fueling station and you have the 10% ethanol sign, may contain 10% ethanol, or it's an E85 station, it's either or. With a blender pump, you can choose whether you want 20% or 30% or 40% or 50%. And what I've learned in the process from meeting with the manufacturers of the pumps themselves, people are already blending. But it takes time. They have to fill up with the 10%. Well, let me ask you, do either of you, when you go to fill up, ever purchase the mid-grade?
No, with the economy the way it is, I buy the cheapest gas there is.
Yeah, we look at the dollars.
You either get the very cheapest one, as most of us do, or if your vehicle's pinging, if it's older, you may put in a little of the higher octane. What the blender pump manufacturers are relating is that people will fill up with a little bit of this and a little bit of this so that they're already blending it. Now you got to start over. You got to activate the pump twice. And so with a blender pump, it's you choose. And what that means is that we have greater opportunity to use more of the renewable source, which is renewably based and has fewer emissions. But the beauty of that is that because you don't get the same gas mileage when you put in the E85, I mean, the research shows that, but the new research also says that at about a 50% blend, it's about the same. So you'd have a choice now to put in 50% and on the way you go.
And as far as...
And there is a blender pump now in Henry County that we funded.
And I assume that's good for farmers because it's ethanol.
Yes.
It is good for the rural community because it's ethanol, and the renewable source, whether it's corn or whether it's biodiesel and it's soybeans for whatever other source that may be. But as we move to the next generation of renewable energy and the source becomes cellulosic, whether it is corn stalks or whether it's switchgrass or another grass, whether it's wood chips, all of that's going to come from a rural community. None of that is going to come from a downtown metropolitan area. So all renewable energy is beneficial to rural communities.
In a small town, rural based, you already mentioned that the largest employer in the area, other than the bank, is or agricultural in nature.
Yes.
So small farmers, not the big ones, but the small family farm, often someone in that family is working in a non-farm job. Maybe it's over the winter, maybe it's part-time on weekends, what have you. Are you seeing that those farmers are having a hard time finding those jobs now? Oh,
very much so. I've got several individuals that are working on the smaller farms and they would like to have off-farm employment, but it's awfully difficult to find part-time off-farm. They've maybe had opportunity to go full-time or maybe in one case over-the-road trucking, which you'd be gone all the time almost. But it's very difficult with this economy we have right now because the jobs just aren't there. And so I would say that we have a number of underemployed individuals at that point in time. We talked earlier about the farming aspect of it. We've gotten away from the full-time farmers now that had a job. Well, they're full-time farmers, but as far as the style of farming where we used to have livestock, hog operations, beef operations that were integral to that farm, they're gone for all practical purposes. We either have large feedlots with hogs or cattle. We went to a strictly grain marketing, and so we're busy in the spring, busy in the fall, Summer and winter, well, we're either hauling crop to town or doing something else or taking care of the machinery. But there are some downtimes there. And the smaller the operation, the larger the downtime. So as a result of that, there are some there is a need out there for other opportunities for our farmers to take advantage of.
Is there any hope that know your farmer, know your food, or is it the other way around? Know your
No, no, you had it right.
Know your farmer, know your food. Might that at least give farmers an option, and instead of growing just corn and beans, maybe they'll grow some specialty crops?
There is, and there's an echo in the room. As the mayor said, we plant in the spring and wait in the summer to harvest in the fall, to wait in the winter to begin that cycle over again, because improvements in technology and genetics have allowed us to do that. And being more specific in our production, as you said. And that being said, Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, which is another program that USDA Rural Development can help fund in a variety of ways, does allow potentially for that. Oftentimes there is a younger member in the family who wants to come back to that farming operation, but there's just not enough financial base to support two families or a third person in the operation. If you become involved in the Local Foods Initiative, you go into it knowing, however, that it's much more labor intensive than being in the cab of either the tractor or the combine or the sprayer. It is a lot more physical labor the way we used to know it. But yet a younger person is more likely to be interested in doing more of that labor. So seasonally, yes, we have marginal land in Henry County that is in row crop production that conceivably could be removed from the row crop and put into a specialty crop or crops and could generate as much or more, and sometimes up to 10 times more per acre on the specialty crop in a season than it would on a farming basis as we know it.
More labor, but more benefit.
Correct. But it's seasonal in Illinois, which means that you may need to invest in one of the high tunnels or a hoop house, or something of that nature, so that you do have a longer growing season to be able to conduct that kind of production.
And that's the problem, is getting those operations in force and getting them up to run.
Exactly.
Because people look at that right now, we're so intent on corn, soybeans, corn. And that's it.
The message, I think the sub-message to that is that in production agriculture for a number of years, and I know both of you have heard this, people involved in production agriculture say people just don't know where their food comes from. Consumers walk into the grocery store and they think that the chocolate milk comes from a brown cow, and and so the producers are frustrated that consumers don't know where their food comes from. Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food is an opportunity to make that connection.
Let's talk about Know Your President. The reason I bring this up is that Marv had an opportunity. You're sitting there saying, village president of Alpha. I've heard that in the news. The president stopped in Alpha, Illinois not too long ago. Did you chat with him?
Unfortunately, no. I was introduced by him, and I was able to stand up in the crowd and wave my hand at him, and I actually saw him. Then after after his speech, we were supposed to have a meet and greet, but the village president for Woodhull and myself went to a little room off to the side there, and we were ushered in, and we said, well, the Secret Service said, please stand here, and the president came in and said, hi, and shook our hand, and he said, well, we had a photo op, so they took our picture, and then I was ushered outside, and village president from Woodhull followed me shortly thereafter. He said, Marv, I think that was our meet and greet with the president.
Was that before or after he went to Galesburg High School?
That was after he went to
I think that's why it was short, because he added Galesburg to the trip. So no doubt a disappointment that you weren't able to share some concerns about rural needs in this country.
Oh, very much so. Both the mayor of Woodhull and myself had a list of questions to ask and discussion points to talk about. We could have spent a number of minutes, if not hours, with him going over the things in rural countryside here that really need some attention and to bring up our concerns and thoughts, but it wasn't meant to be. So,
but it was supposed to be the president reaching out to rural America. Was there evidence of that, or was it just your photo op?
I almost have to be somewhat politically correct here. It was nice to have the president come in and talk to us as far as his meeting, but I didn't hear a whole lot of reaching out, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say.
I would be happy to be your proxy. Now, I don't have a hotline to the White House, but being responsible for rural development in Illinois, I think it is my responsibility to carry that message. So I would be happy to accept that invitation if you so choose.
With that in mind, after the show, we'll have Marv talk to Colleen. Colleen can talk to the president.
Or maybe I'm Secretary Vilsack. I'm not sure.
Secretary Vilsack.
And he was there too.
He's from Iowa. So.
Yes,
And he was there too.
With that, we are out of time. Thank you so much to Colleen Callahan, who is the
Thanks,
Illinois
H.
Director of USDA Rural Development.
Thank you.
And to Marv Waters, the Village President of Alpha. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Next week, it's another mayor, this time Mayor Ardis of Peoria and City Manager Patrick Urich. Join us on the next At Issue.